Hey guys, so I decided to make a video here where I'm going to predict the season, also predict the playoffs. I saw Moonlight Swami do a video, and I was like, hey, that's a really good idea. And I got a lot of people asking me, who do I think is going to win the World Series or win the division or whatnot. I normally don't like to do this type of thing, especially like predicting the playoffs, but just for fun, I'll go ahead and do one. So I'll kind of project their records and talk about each team a little bit. And then we'll also have a playoff prediction at the end. So, starting out in the AL East, I have Tampa going 70 and 92. I know they added Corey Dickerson. I just don't think they'll have enough offense. They still have some decent pitching, but again, I just don't think it'll be enough. Especially in that division. I think that division is going to be highly competitive. I don't think there's necessarily like a team that's just going to run away with it, but I think there's four good teams in this division. And fourth place, I have the New York Yankees. The Yankees, I have them at 84 and 78. They could go anywhere from second to fourth. Heck, they could even win the division. It wouldn't be a surprise to me. I think ultimately it just comes down to they don't have a consistent lineup. They have a lot of lefties in their lineup, a lot of older guys like Beltran, Teixeira. I know they added Castro at second, but and A-Rod's aged another year, even though he had a really good year last year. I think they have a great bullpen if they all stay healthy, and after Chapman serves his suspension, I think they'll have a really good bullpen. I just don't know if their offense is going to be good enough to overcome that. I think a team like Kansas City showed you could win with a bullpen. However, Kansas City also had a very balanced lineup 1 through 9. The Yankees have a lot of holes. Like they strike out a lot, and they just rely on a lot of lefties. So I think they're going to struggle against left-handed pitching. So for third place, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, Toronto could, in my opinion, finish from anywhere from first to fourth. They could easily win the division. But I have them going 85 and 77. I think their offense is great. Um, they lost a few guys like Navarro, which I think is kind of underrated because he would give Russell Martin some days off. But ultimately, I don't trust the Blue Jays rotation. I think their bullpen is okay with Cecil, Asuna, Storin. They even added the switch pitcher Vendetti. I think Stroman is the only guy projected to finish with under a 4 ERA, and they lost Price. I think Price gave him that big boost last year. So I know they added Tulo. They'll have him for the entire year. I think Tulo, in my opinion, I've always said this. I think he's a bit overrated. Still a good shortstop, better than what Jose Reyes. But I think they'll have one of the best offenses. I just don't think it'll be enough, and I think they'll finish third place, 85 and 77. Next team I have second place. This is kind of a surprise, even for me to put him here. And it's kind of contradicting my last statement, but I only have them winning one more game than Toronto, and I think this is just kind of a surprise team I'm going to pick. And I do think the Orioles have the best offense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they led the majors in runs scored. I think it might come down to between them, Toronto, and Boston. Uh, they have guys like Chris Davis, Adam Jones, and they added Trumbo, and they added they added somebody else too. I can't think right now. But they're going to have a lot of power up and down that lineup. They still have Machado. Wieters hopefully can play a full year and stay healthy. Anyways, I just really like their lineup. And I think their rotation, I don't know, for some reason, I don't think it's great. I think it's kind of similar to Toronto's. But I think they've proven that they can win without having a great rotation if you look at, 2, 3 years ago. So I don't know, just kind of an anomaly. They usually do better than what their Pythagorean theorem, if you look at their runs scored, compared to their runs allowed, they usually perform a little bit better than what the Pythagorean theorem suggests. So I got them finishing in second, and actually have them winning the second wild card spot. So for the first place in the AL East, I have the Red Sox winning 93 games. I think Mookie Betts and Bogarts will really step up this year and turn into superstars for that team. I think guys like Ortiz and Hanley, they kind of already stepped down, but I don't think those are the stars of the team, and Pablo. But overall, I think they have a solid lineup. And I think adding Price and Kimbrel is going to be enough for them to win that division. I think their lineup's really good, but they're the only team really, in my opinion, in that division that has a go-to ace, and that's David Price. And they also probably have, outside of the Yankees, they also have probably the best bullpen. I think Kimbrel and Koji are right up there with like Andrew Miller and Chapman and Betances. The thing is, the Yankees have 3 of them. So yeah, I don't know. I have Boston winning the division, 93 games. Moving to AL Central, I have the Indians finishing in last. 68 wins. I think they're going to be awful. They added Napoli and Uribe. I think Francisco Lindor is a good shortstop. But other than that, too inconsistent. Defense is trash. I don't. I do like some of their pitchers like Corey Kluber and Carrasco and Salazar. I just don't like their lineup and I don't like their defense. Nor do I trust their bullpen. So finishing in fourth, I'll have the Twins going barely above 500, 82 and 80. I think they'll kind of be similar to last year. Decent offense. I think they'll each, their young players will each get another year under their belt with, Buxton and Sano. And they also added Park to their lineup. So I think their lineup will be okay. I just think their pitching will struggle. They rely on guys like Phil Hughes to be their ace. I just don't think they'll have enough pitching. So moving to third place, I have the Royals. Again, I think the Royals could finish anywhere from first to third. I have them winning 84 games, and I'm not a fan of the rotation. I know they only had Cueto for a few months, and he didn't really help them, and they still won like 94 games last year. They also lost Holland, even though he was hurt again last year. I still feel like that was a big piece of their bullpen, and they also lost guys like Zobrist. So, and again, I know they got a lot of these guys at the end of the season, and they weren't there for the majority of the season anyways last year. But I think I don't know. I think their offense is really solid, but I think they're going to come down to earth a little bit and kind of be in that mid 80s range. So I don't have anything against the Royals. I really do like their lineup. It's been fun watching them the past 2 years. I just don't know if they have what it takes to go back to back to back for playoff appearances. And you have to think a couple years ago they only won 87 games, so it's not like they dominated. Second place. This is another surprise team. The White Sox I have winning 85 games. And I really didn't think the White Sox would have a good year until I actually sat down and looked at, their lineup, and I was like, wow, these guys could have a pretty solid lineup. So they have Abreu. They still have a LaRoche, even though he didn't have a great year last year. And then they added guys like Jimmy Rollins. Even though he's not a great shortstop, I think he can be better than what he did last year and provide them a little boost. And I think he could be a better option than Alexei. Not saying he's better than Alexei. I don't know. I think Jimmy Rollins could fit in, have a rebound year. Even if he doesn't play much, he's still not a huge factor. But they also added guys like Avila, Navarro for the catcher spots, so they'll be able to platoon them guys. Navarro can also DH. And of course, they added the big bat Todd Frazier. And they also added a guy like Brett Lowry, who can play second base for them, who had a pretty good year last year for Oakland. A very underrated offense. Nobody's really talking about him. I know guys like Melky Cabrera, Adam Eaton, were a bit overrated last year. But I think if that lineup, 1 through 9, I think it could be pretty solid, especially in the AL Central not being as strong as it is. And I think their problem again is going to be the rotation. I think outside of Chris Sale, they might have a few problems, but I think Chris Sale might be enough for them to win 85 games and get them in second place. I still think they'll be short of a playoff run, or a playoff berth. But anyways, I have the White Sox finishing second, 85 and 77. Now for winning the Central, I have the Tigers at 90 and 72. I think adding Justin Upton and Zimmerman in the rotation, I think that'll be enough to get them over the hump. I trust their lineup a little bit more than the White Sox, and I also trust their bullpen a little bit more. So I think the wild card factor might be Justin Verlander here. He needs to have a bounce back here. He needs to provide a little bit more depth, him and Anibal Sanchez in that rotation. So a healthy Cabrera and Victor Martinez plus adding Justin Upton, I think can get them 90 wins and win that division. I don't think this division's really that strong. I think really, if you look at it, any team could win it. Even the Indians, if they actually get some production of their offense, heck, they could even have a chance to win it. But I think the Tigers, I'm just going to favor them because they have that experience and they have those veterans in their lineup, and I trust them more than like the White Sox. Again, moving to the AL West. So again, this one you could almost pick any team to finish first in this one. But here's what I went with. Fifth place, I have the Angels, 78 and 84. I'm not a huge fan of the Angels. I think they got really, really fortunate a couple years ago. I don't think they'll win, 98 games again. I think they relied too much on Trout. They have guys like C.J. Cron, and they still have Pujols, but they really need to step up those two. And even if they step up, that's only 3 guys. They need more than that. I know they added Craig Gentry and moving Trout to left. They also added Daniel Nava. Again, I just don't think it's going to be enough for their lineup, and the rotation has never been great in my opinion. You have guys like Richards and Heaney who can step up and are young starters that have a lot of potential. I just don't think it's going to be enough. That being said, I still have them winning 78 games, so I don't think they'll have a terrible season. I just be surprised if they finish over 500. Moving to fourth place, I have the Seattle Mariners, and they added guys like Adam Lynn, Leonis Martin, and Aoki. I think that'll help their lineup. And they had a pretty decent lineup last year once Robinson Cano finally started hitting, and then what Nelson Cruz did. So I know they could have a decent lineup. I think the rotation was really their problem last year, which is weird to see because usually Seattle, their pitchers do pretty well. But I think Felix will have a solid year. But outside of that, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know, man. Seattle's had a lot of good pieces. They brought in Cano a couple years ago, and it just hasn't worked out yet. So I really don't trust them. But I have them going 80 and 82. Third place. This is kind of another surprise pick. I have the A's, 85 and 77. Do I really think they can win 85 games? Yes, I do. But at the same time, I kind of want to have some surprise picks in here. So I think the A's could be in contention for most of the season, but I think they'll fall off at the end. Some guys they added, Alonso from the Padres, first base. Jed Lowry's coming back to Oakland. They added Chris Davis from the Brewers, who's probably one of the better left fielders. And they added Chris Coughlin from the Cubs, who's a good platoon player. And you have to keep in mind they still have guys like Billy Butler, Coco Crisp, Stephen Vogt, Josh Reddick, and Billy Burns. I think if you put all that lineup together, I think they'll have a good lineup and they can platoon. That's what Oakland likes to do. They like to platoon guys, good combination of righty and lefty. I think their lineup will be pretty good, man. I think it could finish in maybe the top 12 of the league. The rotation, I think, is going to be their problem. Outside of Gray, I don't really know what to expect from them. And I think their bullpen will be fine. I just think it's mainly the rotation. I think Sonny Gray is going to have to lead that team. And I don't know. I just don't think they have enough starters to get that team over the hump. But I do have them going 85 and 77, which is probably more than what most people do. So we'll have to wait and see how they do. Second place, I have the Rangers winning 88 games. I think they won 88, 87 games last year. Some guys I think will have really good years for them. Potentially is Odor and Gallo. They also added Ian Desmond. And you have to keep in mind, they have a very good bullpen on our rotation on paper with Cole Hamels, Yu Darvish. They also added A.J. Griffin. Bullpen's probably their weak spot, but they do have guys like Jake Diekman and Williamson from the Mariners. So I don't know. I think the Rangers will get the first wild card spot. I really do like their lineup. I think they have a good chance to even win the division. But I have the Astros winning the division. Kind of flip-flopped compared to last year. I know the Rangers won it and the Astros got the wild card. But I think the Astros, adding another year to, Correa and their other young players like Gomez and Springer, I think that'll be enough to get them over the hump and finally take the division. I have them only winning 89 games, one more game in Texas. I think it will come down to the wire. Some guys they lost. They did lose Chris Carter, which isn't a big deal. He's pretty much a replacement level first baseman, but when he hit bombs, it was fun to watch. They also lost Scott Kazmir, went to the Dodgers. Added Giles. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Giles from the Phillies to their bullpen, and they already had the best bullpen last year. So, and they have a good young rotation with Dallas Keuchel leading the way. And what I really like about the Astros is their defense. You got Correa, you got Altuve, you got Gomez in center, you got Springer in right. It's a very solid defensive team. And again, I think they're going to hit a lot of home runs with Gaddis in the middle of that lineup. And I really like the Astros. I really expect their young players to develop even more this year. So moving on to the NL, we're going to start with the NL East. We're going to start with the Phillies. This is probably the easiest division to predict, by the way, but I got the Phillies finishing last. I don't really have much to say about the Phillies. They're kind of rebuilding. Franco, the third baseman's good, but other than that, I don't expect much at all. I really don't think they have a chance at all to do anything. I'd be very surprised. I have them going 60 and 102. Next, I have the Braves. I think the Braves will be a little bit better. I really like what the Braves have done the past few years as far as like the trades they made, especially the Cardinals. They got some good prospects from us, including Tyrell Jenkins. And the trade they did to get Shelby Miller, and then they traded him to the D-backs to get even more prospects. I think that was really good by the Braves. So I think we have to kind of watch out for them in a few years. They have a lot of prospects up and coming. I have them going 65 and 97. Third place, I have the Marlins. Again, thing about the Marlins, they always look good on paper, but they always have injury problems or they just don't live up to the potential. I know they got guys like Latos last year who just absolutely didn't do anything for them. It was awful. But the only way I see the Marlins competing is if Stanton and Fernandez stay healthy for the entire year. Then maybe they could be around 500. But I wouldn't count on it. I mean, they already lost guys like Carter Capps. So I have the Marlins going 69 and 93. I just think this is going to be another disappointing year for them. We'll have to see, though. I mean, I can't talk. They do have potential in the lineup. I don't know. I just don't trust them. Coming in second. Now, I was really debating putting this team first, but I ended up putting them at second at 87 and 75. And I'm going to go with the Nationals. I think they'll have another solid year. They're kind of disappointing last year. Had a good year 2 years ago, mainly due to their rotation, but they did add Daniel Murphy and Ben Revere, but they lost Ian Desmond and lost Denard Span, who was probably like their second best hitter last year. Um, they also might count on prospect Trey Turner at shortstop, so that might be one reason they were allowed to let Ian Desmond go. But they do have a guy like Trey Turner at shortstop. We'll have to see how he does. I think the problem with the Nationals is a lot of the guys in their lineup are aging. Wilson Ramos, Zimmerman, not necessarily Rendon. And I think another problem is there are too many righties in that lineup. I just don't see enough balance in it. But again, I think Bryce Harper's going to have another great year. I think their offense is going to be good enough. I think the rotation could be really great with Strasburg and Gio Gonzalez and Tanner Roark possibly stepping up. And of course, they're led by Max Scherzer. And they also have a solid bullpen of Papelbon, Perez. They got Pettit for our Petit, whatever you want to call him, from the Giants. I think overall they'll win 87 games. In first place, I have the Mets winning one more game. I don't think the Mets will do as well as they did last year. I think they'll be a few games under. No disrespect to the Mets, but I think Cespedes will digress a little bit to the mean. They did replace Murphy with Neil Walker, which I think Neil Walker might be a little bit better of a player. Kind of had a down year last year, but I think he might be a little bit better than Murphy in the long run. And they got a Dribble Cabrera at shortstop, which in my opinion is an upgrade. Conforto might be their best hitter, and he might be their best player overall. I'm just not too sold on the Mets lineup. I know they performed really well last year. I'm just not seeing them do that again. They could potentially do it and prove me wrong. And of course, the rotation's great. I'm not going to say much about them. I think the rotation could be the best in majors. But yeah, I got the Mets winning the division 88 and 74. Moving to the NL Central, I think this will be the best division again. I'm going to have the Cubs, or excuse me, I already spoiled it, but I'm going to start at the bottom here. I got the Reds winning 58 games. I think they'll have a terrible season. They really need guys like Mesoraco, Bruce, and Billy Hamilton to step up on offense. The rotation has a few decent young pitchers as well. I'm not going to say much about the Reds. I think they might be the worst team in the league this year. I have the Brewers winning a few more games than them at 60 and 102. We have two bottom feeders in the Central, which I think will help the top three teams in the Central get a better record. But I have the Brewers going 60 and 102. They added Chris Carter, but again, he's an average first baseman, replacement level. They also lost Adam Lynn. Rotation and pin is just not very good. I just don't expect much from the Brewers. They also lost Chris Davis too, he was one of the better players. So for third place, I have the Pirates going 89 and 73. They're gonna have John Jaso and Michael Morse platoon at first base, and they did just pick up David Freese for third base. I don't think David Freese is great at third base, but I think I don't know. They didn't really have any other options. I think he's an above-average third baseman. I really like their outfield, of course, with Kutch and Marte, and I think their pin will be pretty good as well. Rotation again is pretty solid. The Pirates seem to play really good defense with all the shifts they do. They seem to save a lot of runs that way, so I think they'll keep that trend up, and I think they'll win 89 games, even though they lost a few guys. But the Pirates always seem to play pretty well. Finishing in second place, I have my Cardinals. I think the Cardinals will win around 90 games. I think them and the Pirates will kind of battle it out for the two wild card spots. The thing about the Cardinals is they're still really balanced. Even if they lost Hayward, they still have four potential really good outfielders with, especially if Gurchek and Piscotty step up. But they also have a guy like Tommy Pham who could be a vital player that comes off the bench or replace one of them if necessary if one of them gets hurt. I think the big question mark with the Cardinals right now is their shortstop with Johnny Peralta. I'm not sure what they're going to do yet. I don't know if they're going to rely on a guy like Jed Jerko or Diaz, who's unproven. We'll just have to wait and see, and hopefully Peralta can come back in a few months. I think the one thing about the Cardinals, though, that's not getting talked much about is their pitching. Their pitching and defense. I know losing Hayward's going to hurt their defense a little bit, but I think people are forgetting they led the majors last year in ERA. They had one of the best pitching seasons ever, especially in the newer generation of baseball. But anyways, they led the MLB in ERA, and that was without Waino. So they're going to have a rotation of Waino, Garcia, or Adam Wainwright, Garcia, Michael Waka, Carlos Martinez, and they added Mike Leake. And they're still going to have a solid bullpen. They added a Korean pitcher named O. They still have Rosenthal, Seegers, and hopefully Walton can stay healthy. I still see them winning around 90 games because of their pitching. Winning the Central, I already spoiled it. I have the Cubs. They're probably the best team on paper. I still agree they're the best team, even if some of the players don't live up to their potential. Like, I don't think Lackey will be as good as he was last year. And I don't think Arrieta can repeat his performance from last year either. That being said, there's really no holes in this team. They don't really have a weakness. Solid bullpen, really good rotation, and I really like their lineup. Their lineup kind of reminds me of what Kansas City did last year. And of course, it helps adding guys like Ben Zobrist to second base. He could potentially even play some outfield for them. But I mean, they have Rizzo, they have Bryant, they have Russell, and of course they're gonna have Hayward. And they, I think, one underrated move by them is going out and getting Dexter Fowler back. Now he can play center, and he can even platoon with guys like Schwarber because he hits lefties really well. So again, I have them going 95 and 67 and winning the NL Central. The NL West, starting at the bottom, the Padres just awful. I think the Padres were probably the most disappointing team last year. They lost Upton, but they added Alexei Ramirez and John Jay, which, I'm a huge John Jay fan. I love them in St. Louis, but I don't think he's really any more than a replacement level player, maybe a little bit better than that. And plus, he's digressed a little bit. Alexei is probably the only real upgrade they got at shortstop, but I think they're going to be trash. Just not very good last year. I think last year they should have started rebuilding. I don't know what they were doing. But anyways, I have them winning 68 games. Fourth place, I'm going to have the Rockies. And to me, I think this is kind of a surprise pick. Not necessarily picking them to finish fourth, but I think the fact I have them winning 77 games. I think their offense will be good, even though they lost Corey Dickerson. I think, of course, their offense is going to be good. They play at Coors. But even considering the fact they play at Coors, I think their lineup's going to be solid. But I think one thing underrated a little bit, if you could even call it that, is the rotation. They have a lot of young pitchers, and they still have De La Rosa. I think John Gray, Lyles, Bettis, could all be solid pitchers. And you have to keep in mind, they play at Coors, so I'm talking about, like, if these guys post, around 4 ERAs, I think that's really good for pitching at Coors. And I expect those pitchers to be around, 4 ERA pitchers, maybe low 4 to high 3. I think if they can do that, I think they can be a competitive team this year. I still have them only winning 77 games, though. And they also added Parra and added Mark Reynolds, which I'm very curious to see how many home runs Mark Reynolds has and how far he will hit them, because he's probably going to love it there. Third place, I have the D-backs. I really, really, really was trying to find a way to put them second, because I think the Dodgers, I already spoiled it, but I have the Dodgers finishing second. But I really wanted to find a way, but I just couldn't. The Dodgers were like too good on paper, and I still think the D-backs have a lot of holes. So they added Greinke, they added Shelby Miller, Gene Segura. I think Gene Segura is an average shortstop, nothing more. I think he's kind of overhyped. Rotation, yeah, on paper it looks a lot better, but I think Greinke won't have the year he did last year. He's still a really good pitcher, though. But I think the big wild card might be Shelby Miller. If he has a really good season, I'm talking like low threes ERA, and can get them 180 plus innings pitched. I don't see it though. He usually doesn't get out of the sixth inning. He relies too much on his fastball and cutter, and he relies too much on balls being put in play, and that's not a good combination at Chase Field. I know the D-backs have a pretty solid defense, so we'll have to wait and see. I think Shelby Miller is the wild card here. Personally, I don't think he'll have that good of a year, and I think he'll be a letdown, especially at the number 2 spot in the rotation. I do like Patrick Corbin, and I do like Archie Bradley's potential, however. And their bullpen did add Clippard, so. And of course, we all know about Goldschmidt and Pollock. They'll have a pretty solid lineup, but I just don't know if it'll be enough to overcome their pitching. Second place, I have the Dodgers going 88 and 74. Again, I know they're going to win 88 games. I have them winning 88 games, but to me, it's still disappointing for all the talent they have and all the money they spend. And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Corey Seager. I don't know. I just think there's going to be a lot of pressure. We'll see if Jock Peterson can rebound. I think these teams, they have some young guys, some young pieces, but at the same time, they're kind of aging. They have guys like Carl Crawford and Andre Ethier. I don't think Justin Turner will hit as well as he did last year. I just think that's kind of too much to expect from him. Again, but they have a really solid lineup, regardless if you want to nitpick at it or not. And they have a good bullpen with Jansen probably being one of the best closers in baseball. And they also added Scott Kazmir. I know they all have all lefties in the rotation. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's kind of a good thing. But again, I have them finishing second place, 88 and 74, so it's not like it's a bad thing. Now for the NL West division winners, I have the Giants. Um, the thing about the Giants, we all know they added Cueto, which, in my opinion, has been a top three pitcher the past 3 or 4 years. Like him and Wainwright have been right up there, but Cueto arguably has been the second best pitcher the last probably 3 years. That is huge, adding him behind Bumgarner. I think in my opinion, he's had a better 3 years than Bumgarner the last 3 years, I should say. But they also added Samardzija, and I think he'll be the wild card if Samardzija can give them some good innings. And when I say good innings, I'm talking about having maybe a low 3 ERA, because I think having around a 3.8, 3.5 ERA is not necessarily giving them too much when they play AT&T. I think Matt Cain, really overrated. I don't know. I don't really like the rotation, but I do really like Cueto and Bumgarner. So I think Samardzija is going to be the wild card. Uh, Now, saying all that, I think one of the most underrated aspects of the Giants is their lineup. 1 through 8, they're solid. I mean, they don't hit a lot of home runs necessarily outside of Posey, and I know Crawford had 21 home runs last year, but I think 1 through 8, they're one of the most balanced lineups. They added Denard Span. They have Joe Pinnick, who's a great contact hitter. Brandon Belt, great eye. He's going to hit you around 15 to 25 home runs. Gets on base, and of course you have the MVP. A couple of years ago, MVP Buster Posey, and they also had Duffy as well. So again, great lineup. I really like what their lineup can do, and I think once you consider the fact they play AT&T, I don't think they'll necessarily lead the league in runs scored, but I think if you adjust for the ballpark in which they play at, I think they have the best lineup right up there with the Cubs. So I have them winning the NL West at 93 and 69. Moving on to the playoffs. So for the wild card, for the American League, I have the Orioles getting a second wild card, and they're going to play at Texas. I have Texas winning this game just because they have so many options for who can pitch. They could go with Hamels, or they could go with Darvish. And I think in a one-game playoff, that's really the only thing you can look at. I think the Orioles have a lot of power, and to be honest, I'd be kind of surprised even if they got the wild card, even though I'm predicting them. I think the wild card spots are going to be very difficult to choose, especially for the AL. I think the NL it's not as difficult, but I do have the Rangers winning that one-game playoff. And for the National League, it's going to be Pirates at Cardinals. Again, this is a toss-up. I don't really like predicting this type of thing. But I did go with the Cardinals mainly just because they have home field and I like their pitching a little bit more. Although the Pirates do have Garrett Cole or Lariano. Again, it's just kind of a crapshoot. I chose the Cardinals in that game. Back to the AL, so that means the Rangers would be on the road taking on the Red Sox. The number 1 seed Red Sox, and the Astros would be on the road with the Tigers. I have the Red Sox beating the Rangers, and then I have the Astros, I guess you could kind of say upsetting the Tigers. Not really, but I have them beating the Tigers. So the ALCS would be the Red Sox versus Astros. Go back to the National League. Cards would be at Cubs. Again, kind of similar to what happened last year. You had the 3 best teams just beat up on each other, and only one of them survived to make the championship series. I don't think it's necessarily fair. I think it's how it's going to be again, though. And I'm going to give the Cubs the advantage for really no reason. They have home field. And I don't know. I just don't like picking the Cardinals. I really do think the Cubs are going to have a solid team, though. And it's really hard for me to do these playoffs. I think it's going to be a toss-up for that Cards-Cubs. If they do meet, even if the Pirates make it, I think it'd be a toss-up. For the other series, it'd be the Mets taking on the Giants. I'm going to go with the Giants on this one because I think if they have guys like Bumgarner and Cueto in the rotation, I think that can carry them. And I know the Mets have guys like Harvey and DeGrom, but I think, I'd really like the Giants lineup, and I'm just going to take them. Again, I don't believe in that even year bullshit or whatever. I think that's silly. I think the Giants just are going to have a good lineup this year. So for our ALCS, we're going to have the Red Sox versus Astros. In the NLCS, we're going to have the Cubs versus Giants. Now for the American League Championship Series, I'm going to have the Astros beating the Red Sox. I just like what the Red Sox are. I like what the Astros are doing, and I think the Astros actually have a better rotation than what the Red Sox get thrown out there. I mean, David Price is going to have to be pitching 2 or 3 times in that series for them to even have a chance. I'm going to go with the Astros making the World Series in the American League. I actually predicted them to make the World Series last year, And I think if Correa wouldn't have messed up on that double play ball, I think they would have, beat the Blue Jays and made it. But, things happen. They didn't make it. So, moving on to the NLCS, I have the Giants beating the Cubs. Again, no real reason. I do like the Giants' rotation with Cueto and Bumgarner. I think they both proven they can pitch in the playoffs. I think that'd be a really good series, though. But I have the Giants winning it. And the World Series would be the Astros versus Giants. And I'm going to favor the Giants in this one, so I'm going to take the Giants to win it all. Again, I don't like the damn Giants. I freaking can't stand them. I don't know. I don't like them, so this is very hard for me to do. But I do have the Giants winning it all. I really like their rotation. Their lineup is solid. Again, I don't believe in that even year bullshit, but I'm going to take the Giants in this one. So let me know what you guys think. I know a lot of you guys probably disagree with what I said, but let me know. What do you guys think? Who do you have winning it all? Who are your division winners? What do you guys think about my pick on the Giants? Do you think that's really out in left field? Yeah, just let me know what you guys think. But this is Cardinal Bird 5 signing out. Peace.